How a tractor mechanic ruined Ferrari. The true story of Ferruccio Lamborghini. Imagine you've just spent the equivalent of $100,000 on a sports car. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever owned. It screams around corners, turns every head on every road, and makes you feel for the first time in your life like you've arrived somewhere worth being. And then the clutch breaks. You complain to the manufacturer, and he, the legend himself, looks you dead in the eye and tells you that a tractor farmer has absolutely no business telling him how to build a car. Now, what would you do? Most people would go home, maybe write a strongly worded letter, maybe cry into a glass of expensive Italian wine. Ferruccio Lamborghini was not most people. Ferruccio Lamborghini built a car company that, over 60 years later, still makes Enzo Ferrari look like he lost an argument he started. To understand this story, one of the most beautifully petty acts of revenge in the history of capitalism, you have to go back to where Ferruccio began. Not in a gleaming factory, not in a boardroom, in a field. In the Emilia-Romagna region of northern Italy, born in 1916 to a family of grape farmers, Ferruccio grew up with dirt under his fingernails and engines in his dreams. He was obsessed with how things worked. While other kids were kicking footballs, Ferruccio was dismantling farm equipment and putting it back together, usually better than he found it. World War II interrupted everything, as wars tend to do, and Ferruccio was drafted into the Italian Royal Air Force. But even in the military, his mechanical genius set him apart. He kept aircraft and vehicles running on practically nothing, improvising parts from scrap in ways that left his superiors baffled and grateful. When the war ended, he came home to rubble, rationing, and a country that desperately needed to rebuild. Ferruccio looked at a nation full of farmers with no equipment and saw something most people didn't. He saw an opportunity. He started converting surplus military vehicles into tractors. Cheap, sturdy, essential. Italy was hungry, literally, and the farms needed machines. Lamborghini Trattori was born not from glamour, but from necessity, and Ferruccio made it work through sheer mechanical brilliance and an almost pathological refusal to quit. By the 1950s, his tractor company was one of the most successful in Italy. He was rich, he was respected, and like any self-made man who's conquered one mountain, he started looking for another. He bought a Ferrari, of course he did. The Ferrari 250 GT was the pinnacle of Italian automotive prestige in the late 1950s and early 1960s. It was violent and gorgeous and loud in all the right ways. Ferruccio loved it. But Ferruccio was not the kind of man who loved things passively. He drove it, studied it, and almost immediately noticed something that bothered him deeply. The clutch. It was the same clutch mechanism used in, wait for it, his own tractors. The very same design, and it kept failing. Now, a less mechanically obsessive man might have just had it fixed and moved on. But Ferruccio couldn't let it go. He had the solution in his head. He could see exactly what Ferrari was doing wrong and exactly how to fix it. So he did what any reasonable, self-made, enormously successful industrialist would do. He went to Maranello. He asked to speak with Enzo Ferrari personally, and he told him, politely, that the clutch in his car was defective and that he, Ferruccio Lamborghini, knew how to make it better. The response from Enzo Ferrari has been repeated so many times it has almost become mythology. But the core of it, historically documented and widely corroborated, was this. Enzo Ferrari told Ferruccio Lamborghini that a tractor maker should stick to making tractors, and that he had no business telling Ferrari how to build sports cars. He was dismissed, shut out, sent home like an overeager amateur who had wandered into the wrong room. Here is where lesser men fold. And here is where Ferruccio Lamborghini became something else entirely. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten. By most accounts, he simply nodded, turned around, walked out, and went back to Sant'Agata Bolognese, a small town just 20 miles from the Ferrari factory. And he decided, with the cold precision of a man who builds engines for a living, that he would build a better car. He didn't just hire engineers, he poached Ferrari's best ones. Giotto Bizzarini, the man largely responsible for Ferrari's legendary 250 GTO engine, came to work for Lamborghini. Gianpaolo Dallara, who would go on to become one of the most celebrated automotive engineers in the world, signed on. Franco Scaglione designed the body. Within a year, Automobile Lamborghini had a factory. Within 2 years, they had a car. The 350 GT debuted in 1964, and the automotive world collectively stopped what it was doing and stared. But the real earthquake came in 1966. The Lamborghini Miura. It was mid-engined, a layout Ferrari had publicly dismissed as unsuitable for road cars. It was faster than anything Ferrari was selling. It was so stunning visually that grown men reportedly wept at its debut at the Geneva Motor Show. Car magazines across Europe and America ran out of superlatives. Frank Sinatra bought one. The Miura didn't just compete with Ferrari, it redefined what a sports car could be. It did things to the automotive landscape that are still felt today every time you see a supercar with a mid-mounted engine, which is nearly all of them. Enzo Ferrari, to his credit, was not a man who embarrassed easily, but the Miura clearly stung. Ferrari rushed development on his own mid-engine project in direct response. The rivalry that followed, through the 1960s and 1970s, produced some of the most extraordinary machines ever put on four wheels, on both sides. The Countach against the Berlinetta Boxer. Two Italian giants locked in a competition that ultimately gave the whole world something to stare at. And this is the part of the story that tends to get lost inside all the horsepower numbers and paint colors. The real invention here wasn't the V12 engine or the scissor doors. The real invention was the idea that being told you don't belong somewhere is simply a data point, not a verdict. Ferruccio Lamborghini took an insult and industrialized it. He turned wounded pride into an engineering discipline. He created an entire philosophy of refusal, the stubborn, unglamorous, deeply human belief that the person dismissing you has simply not yet seen what you are capable of building. Ferruccio eventually sold Lamborghini in 1972, disillusioned by the company's direction after a series of financial pressures. He went back to his estate in Umbria, grew wine, and spent the rest of his life doing exactly what he pleased, which, if you think about it, is the most Ferruccio Lamborghini way to end a story imaginable. He died in 1993. The company he founded out of spite, out of wounded ego, out of the quiet fury of a man told to know his place, is today valued at billions. The cars carry a raging bull on their badge, the astrological symbol for Taurus, Ferruccio's birth sign. Fittingly, stubbornly, magnificently bovine. So here is the question that should keep you thinking long after this ends. How many world-changing things have been built not from ambition, not from vision, not from capital or planning or the right connections, but from a single moment where someone important looked at someone hungry and said, "You don't belong here"? How many empires were founded on the back of a dismissal? And more uncomfortably, how many weren't, simply because the person dismissed chose to go home instead? If this story lit something up in you the way it does for us, subscribe and stay close, because the next story we're taking you into is just as strange, just as human, and honestly even harder to believe. We'll see you there.